Hi, Max. I'm really glad you agreed to let me ask you some questions as a novice interviewer. It brings me pleasure to introduce you to Max, who happens to be an exceptionally talented developer. Would you find his story captivating and fascinating? That he started literally in the summer of 2019, and within a few months, yes, it was literally 7 or 8 months from that moment, they had already come out. Their studio had reached a turnover of several 100,000 rubles. I think it's really cool. Today we are going to talk about these tricky questions. We are going to ask Maxim what we should do, where we should start, what points we should take into account to make it work. To be honest, I'm very interested in this. That's why, Maxim, I'm going to ask everything for myself first of all. Good. You're a success. I'm not so good.
Well, first of all, hello everyone. Yes, my name is Maxim, and I'd like to make a little remark. Actually, I've been involved in game making as such, probably since I was 13 years old. That is, since about 2013, right from the smallest of my beginnings, I would say. However, once I completed technical school, I found myself with a substantial amount of spare time and decided to take it more and more seriously. I had a strong desire to connect my life with this passion and truly start making money from it. And before that, it was all just some crafts, unfinished. I mean, basically, you said it absolutely right. I had not released a significant game until that point.
So the summer of 2019, that's the start, right?
Yeah, roughly speaking, yeah, it's the
That's
start
quite
of
a
our whole
start.
thing.
Explain to me right away. I mean, where did it all start? I mean, I understand you started with your partner.
Yes, with Arthur. It started out as, like I said, I graduated from technical school and I needed a job of some kind. Well, in the city, of course, I'm from a pretty small town. It's got a population of 100,000 maybe. And the average salary there is 17,000 Russian rubles. I, of course, as an ambitious guy, thought, no, I want to become a millionaire, something else. And at that time, I already had some knowledge in game dev, but I didn't know how to make the project profitable. So I started, probably like all programmers and coders, with freelancing. That is, I simply looked for orders and started making games to order. And it actually brought in a little bit of money. I mean, I even worked in another small studio for 250 rubles a day. For me at that time, it was already fabulous money, and I thought, wow, everything is cool. I'm making money on the internet, mom, look. But it did not last long because the boss began to get insolent. He says, earn more, I will pay you the same. Well, naturally, I wasn't pleased with it, so I left and returned to freelancing instead. The freelance work allowed me to earn more money while working fewer hours. Then, by sheer chance in the summer of 2019, I reconnected with my friend Arthur, whom I currently work with. It all happened thanks to an ad Arthur posted on Target and VKontakte. In other words, my friend was the one who set up the ad for, how do I say this correctly, he was looking for employees. And I make games on Construct, maybe some of your subscribers know, for this program. And I was very happy because it's hard to find an all customer order specifically so that the customer is satisfied with Construct.
I hope I said the right thing. Can you please clarify if Arthur is your partner's name? I mean, am I right in assuming that? And Arthur was looking for a programmer, yes, in fact, a developer who exactly knows Construct. Why such an unusual request?
At that time, he was also starting to do it all. He was getting some money from his games. There is literally 6,000 rubles a month, 6 to 8, so he was just about the limit from the center. And he himself started to get acquainted with this program, with Construct specifically. That's why he needed these developers, so he could find the project himself, get the project, and put the promo codes, the codes, and put the game out. That's why he needed that particular Construct developer. And I completely by accident, just scrolling through memes in VKontakte, found this ad, wrote to him. I remember how excited I was to hear back from him. I was like, yay, that's it. I'm going to have an order. I'm going to have money. At that point, by the way, I had gotten a laptop on credit for 60,000 rubles. I was shocked in general how I got approved. But I took that step because I firmly decided that I needed a good laptop so that I could work somewhere. Because before that, I had an old roughly speaking, I was working from my grandmother's laptop, which was only for movies.
Uh-huh.
And so I needed money urgently in any order. I would take any job. And so I was very excited about the opportunity. And we started working. Basically, we agreed on a salary of 2,000 rubles a week because then Arthur didn't have any special means. And me, I was really happy about it. And I started to make orders. I made them literally, yes, I probably worked for a month. I made 2 games of some kind, which in the end we didn't put out. Still income, it turns out. How much was it? 8,000 rubles a month was not enough, and strangely enough, we parted ways. And in the period from August to September, we never crossed paths. And I went to Moscow to work as a programmer. I found a job, and they promised me 50,000 rubles in Moscow. And plus it's still kind of Moscow, and it's cool. I've always dreamed of coming here to see what's going on here. And I thought I found a very good offer, and I was very happy about the whole thing. And I wrote again to Arthur, that is, if he had some order, I needed money somehow to make money for moving. I wrote to Arthur, he said, yes, I have a project. He has a little bit of income growth there too. I made another game for him, which we put out, as far as I remember. I got for a week, earned somewhere 15,000, it turns out, for this game, and with this money, all went to Moscow. That is to say, I paid the ticket and accommodation here.
And you brought your credit card laptop with you?
Yes, of course, because I had to pay for it for another year and there was nothing else. And when I came here, I got a job in this firm, but we kept in touch with Arthur because we somehow matched interests. And we talked and talked, and it turned out that he was coming to Moscow in a week. And I thought it would be a cool idea to just meet and talk, because it's also about getting to know each other in Moscow. It's interesting and useful. When he arrived, he was from Vladivostok, which is a distant location. It was a long trip for him, and we finally met up. And we came up with a very interesting project. I mean, a very cool, good game. We spent the whole evening in McDonald's with him and discussed our brilliant plans. But the problem was that I was working now. I mean, I was working in an office. Due to the fact that I was occupied with office work throughout the weekdays, I had no spare time available. In order to avoid overexertion, I needed to rest on the weekends. Eventually, I reached the conclusion that quitting my job and pursuing full-time employment was the best course of action on this project.
Look, did you happen to have any money saved up back then? Can you explain how did you make that decision?
Arthur and I, as I said, he had a little bit of this business going. He hit a plateau. Literally, I don't remember how much it was, either 60 or 80,000 rubles a month. Basically, you could say not bad, but again, he was releasing new projects throughout that time and they weren't firing, nothing was happening. We both agreed that I would resign and that he would compensate me for this month's work at my previous salary of $30,000 rather than $50,000. I followed through on my decision to resign. He fulfilled his promise to compensate me, and now I am working on the game. So I was able to basically afford it. But I was risking stability at the time. I could already work steadily there. And with this project, we didn't know what would happen. But I'm a fucking optimist. First of all, I've always dreamed about it. I mean, wow, my own game studio, I can do what I want when I want. It always beckoned to me, and I liked that opportunity more than sitting in an office. So I quit my job. Yeah, I started working on the project. We were very actually responsible about it. I didn't have much knowledge about it, but it was likely the most significant project I had undertaken at the time. I invested all my energy into it and truly dedicated myself. We thoroughly analyzed our competitors, selecting the best and endeavoring to eliminate the worst. We put in a considerable amount of effort, and once we had outlined the concept of the game, I started working on it. I had to leave Moscow again for some time to go back to my home because of the lack of money, as there were still advertising costs for previous games and personal expenses. I had previously released everything exactly in the play market. 2 games, and that's this one there. The Prediction Ball, it's an app in general, and platformer. That's it. That's kind of my 2 games. And the 3rd game has already become successful. And so the first 2, the Prediction Ball, that's actually the very first thing I put out. And what's interesting is I sold that app afterwards. In order to repay a loan, I had to sell something as I was strapped for cash. I chose to sell my valuable organic item that was earning me $1 a day. This decision was made due to my urgent need for money. For $100, literally a month's income, even less than this app. I don't even remember how I found a buyer. Somehow I was randomly looking for where to make money in general. And I found, like, on freelancing, like buying an app. And then the next game, Oxory, that was actually, I thought that was going to be my serious project, because at that point I was going to freelance, but I didn't have a portfolio as such. I was making knockoffs all the time that were never released anywhere. And I'm thinking, well, how is a person going to believe me that I'm cool? So I tried to put all my skills as a programmer into Oxory, some good cool mechanics. And I think it's a cool game because people still write me when there's an update, and unfortunately there probably won't be an update for it.
Listen, how important is it? Well, and the overall success, well, you've managed to achieve this success. Yes, the current one with the 2 of you working together. I mean, how important is it as a programmer and a game designer, yes, to have this backup, the help of a marketer, a targeting marketer who can find a niche? The symbiosis right there, how important is that?
Well, you know, I'll tell you from personal experience that it's very important. That is, in general, a person can develop some skills in himself. There's a little bit of programming, a little bit of game design, a little bit of that, but you're still not going to be great at everything. Well, that's what I think. And that's why at some point you have to concentrate on your ability to do one thing. And then you will find people who will be willing to help you, like I did with Arthur. I concentrated on the fact that I could just make a good game. And then fate brought me together, so to speak, with a very cool marketer. I mean, you should try to find yourself helpers and partners. You are given the stunning opportunity to accomplish great things by yourself without relying on others. I have acquaintances who earn good money on their games too, alone. But it's hard for them because they are everywhere. So they are unable to concentrate on a single task.
Cool. Listen, you and Arthur are going to keep working together from now on, right? I mean, you don't do it separately, you do it together.
But we are already together as a team and have no plans to split up. That is, we have a definite plan for how to grow further, how we want to conquer more, and we are thinking about the console market now, how to release. We are looking for good publishers, and as if we will be recognized and will be like some rock stars, Epic Games, I hope.
Well, sooner or later. We can do this.
Sooner or later, yeah. I mean, we're not thinking failure, we're thinking good. You know, I've actually had some people say to me, you're just lucky. And that, on the one hand, is very frustrating. And I justify that by arguing that there's a good example of a fisherman. A fisherman an entry-level fisherman, so to speak. He might be able to catch some cool rubes, but it's maybe a 1 in a million chance. And when you study the material, the topic, you know how to do cool, your chance you'll be lucky, it's much higher. So if you do it time after time, you might get lucky with a much better chance than you do once.
So in short, you're actually quite fortunate, but you have made some previous efforts and it has logic that you got lucky. You're saying that, right? Like that's what's supposed to happen if you keep trying and trying time after time after time.
It's kind of my slang for life is that you can't fail. If you try something all the time, sooner or later you're going to come to the point where you succeed.
That's a good point.
Sometime towards the end of December, I remember right before New Year's Eve, I finished the beta version. That is, the minimum amount was ready to run on soft launch. Well, really, I didn't know it was called that at the time. but we wanted to put the game out to see how it would be, what kind of feedback from the game, what to redo. And some downloads, of course, were going on the game. Well, literally, I don't know how many. I honestly don't even remember, but it wasn't much. But the most important thing is that we got feedback. We realized that, in principle, we like the game. The mechanics are interesting. It was a clone of Earn to Die 2. If anyone remembers, it was a very popular flash drive.
It's where you smash zombies, you drive a car.
Yeah, pumping it up. Well, it's not exactly a clone. We just took the root of the game mechanics. You know, the one where you drive around and you upgrade your car. And after the soft launch of this so-called game, we finished the game.
To do. Wait a moment, Maxim. So a soft launch, right? What exactly does that mean? I mean, did you put the game out and count on organic installs, or did you start an advertising campaign?
We were counting on organics only. Plus, in the previous game, we added a link to the game. I mean, it's actually one of our best solutions. Well, we call it a grid. This approach allows all our current popular games to be interconnected, creating links between them. And so a person going into one game sees more links to other games and downloads them. And I'll tell you, there's a very big effect of that.
How hard do you do it? That is, when you launch the game, the ads appear immediately, or is it at some point it happens?
No, there are no ads as such. It's just in the main menu, somewhere there on the right or left, 2 buttons. I mean, the first part, there's another game of some sort like that. And the logo ad, basically. I mean, it's not aggressive in any way. It's just there, and a person, if he sees it, will download it.
And how long did it take from the start of development to the soft launch?
Somewhere, I guess. 6 weeks, yes. I left Moscow in the middle of November, and on December 28th, somewhere we published the game for TRS.
That's cool. So what happened next?
Actually, after the soft launch, we found our main bugs and fixed them. I finished the rest of the game. So, roughly speaking, it was divided into chapters. There were 4 chapters. I only managed to complete 1 task, but that was enough for me. It was my way of finding motivation, since I was already feeling exhausted after working for a month and a half. And to motivate myself, I added counters to the game. I mean, it said that the update would be in 10 days. And I thought, oh, how have I fooled the players I need to sit down to do? And I sat around really all day. I remember I rented an office purely for myself because commercial rent was cheap in the city. I rented a 10 square meter office for 5,000 and sat there just from morning till evening so that I would not be distracted by the game. And after I finished all the chapters, Arthur already, he's kind of a marketer of something. He prepared the advertising. We started with the money we had available and then we launched.
How much?
At that time we had about 150,000 rubles. But we expected that this money would be gone within a month. So we kind of took it for ourselves. We had 150,000 rubles.
Did you earn this money, or did you just get together with your relatives and save it?
It was earned money from the first part of the game that Arthur made. And the game that I did, that was the sequel. The second part with the mechanics of the game are interesting, although it must be said that Arthur is not a very skilled programmer or game designer. Hello, Arthur. But as an ad guy, he's a god, so I did the game design, so to speak, and he did the advertising.
Can we say the name of the game?
But right now the game is actually literally, I think in 2 weeks it's going to be over 5 million.
Wow.
Installations. But those who are very interested can find the link in my group, so go there.
Great, great. All right. Okay, cool. Okay, and you launched for 150,000 rubles. Listen, did you already know the profitability of purchasing a rig at the time of launch? So you had foresight regarding the cost of purchasing a rig for making profit?
Yeah, we knew roughly. So based on the fact that we had 150,000, we were spending 1,000 or 2,000 a day on advertising for the past games, and we thought we had enough of all that money. we poured it all into AdWords. We only advertised there because that's our audience. And we calculated that our LTV would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.50 rubles. It is so low because after all, we are mostly played by children. They rarely donate, and in principle, there was no donation in the game as such. But at that time, advertising came out in 60 to 80 kopecks a conversion. That is, it worked.
But it is quite low. And how much did you get to buy installations per day?
I wanted to tell you about that we were planning to spend a specific amount. I don't remember, but here's the amount. 2,000 or 3,000 a day. And after the game came out of soft launch and we started advertising, just that money all started burning through. Absolutely, the traffic was pouring in really well. We didn't really understand why. But we naturally liked it because the downloads of the game were good, because of the fact that a lot of ads are shown. And we literally spent all these 150,000 in 2 or 3 days and were left without money. But we knew that we would have a lot of money in a month. It must be a good feeling. Yeah, but it was really hard to survive the whole month of January without money. And when the next payment came, and it turns out we were sitting, well, yeah, the whole January almost without money. And in the 25th day came the next payment from Google. 250,000 rubles. And our mistake was that we poured this money in again, and it was all spent again. That is, the advertising was pouring in very well. Already at the price of installation, I don't remember, somewhere in the neighborhood of, yes, 60 to 70 kopecks it was. LTV.
Why was it your mistake?
Because we spent absolutely all the money. Again. That is, we were left without money and we borrowed another 100,000 and spent it all, but we did it taking into account that as long as it is pouring, we should pour it, as we had no money.
That makes sense, yeah. And what was the LTV? Did it stay about the same, more than a ruble?
Yes, it was somewhere around ruble 15. That is, in principle, we paid off the traffic, so we poured. Here.
And here's another question. You say that you have about 5 million installations now. If you break those 5 million down into organic and traffic, what's the ratio? It's like 1 to 1.
But it will be difficult to calculate here because, again, I was mainly engaged in game design, but I will tell you that just in the period of January, when we spent all the money from January on advertising and in a week or so we got to the top, that is, our game was in the tops, exactly in the top of free games. We were somewhere on the 50th place and in the top of popular games on the 3rd. So it gave a lot of actually organics. And the good thing is we got to the top in the US and the LTV of the game had 9 rubles.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was, yeah, it was really cool. And we actually got quite a lot of organic traffic from the tops, but still we had a peak of probably 150,000 installations in one day.
That's really cool. Listen, that's interesting. And you buy traffic, it turns out, only on, well, man, these are marketing questions, of course, but I'm just curious, do you buy traffic only to countries, let's say, with high LTVs, like America, Germany, France, and so on? Is that where you have it?
No, we just now started to do it. I took a course and we realized that there is such a thing as the Big Mac index, right? And it's a cool tip, by the way, and it's helped us raise our income. Before that, we were buying cheap traffic, as I said, 50, 60 kopecks, and it was traffic from cheap countries, well, roughly speaking, from poor countries, i.e. Brazil, India, Vietnam, poor countries, because there is cheap traffic, and LTV, respectively, there is much lower. And it turned out that we set up advertising all over the world, and it was pouring only to these countries. Countries. But when we realized what the Big Mac index is, we started to customize and just count LTV for other countries. Then we realized that in the USA the LTV is 9 rubles. So we began to set up separate advertising campaigns for each country. We calculated how many countries we have where there are a large number of players so that we could adequately calculate LTV. And I don't remember exactly which countries, but we set up separate advertising campaigns where the conversion price was already set at 2 to 5 rubles, already quite high. And then Traffic came from rich countries, and the revenues increased even more because rich countries, where the LTV is much higher. And spending, roughly speaking, the same 5 rubles, we earned 9. Well, a net profit of 4 rubles per player from the same USA. That is why it is very important to segment players and set up campaigns for all countries separately.
Listen, I'm currently driving some traffic to my games, and I've noticed that from small countries, well, I mean, as you say, not from small countries, but where there are low earnings like Brazil, Pakistan, and so on, there accordingly, payback is not even a question of it. I mean, even advertising, the fill rate is quite low for advertising. So you still kept LTV so high. Did you calculate it for all, let's say, installations, or did you only track the traffic you bought?
We counted just for a month. That is, we took, well, for a month in general, which is normal for LTV. We calculated for a month of LTV, it came out to 15 rubles, and we took half of the cost. That is, we wanted to recoup the traffic twice and took half the cost.
So you counted
Did you take
organics
it?
and total traffic, right? You calculated the total revenue, divided it by the installations, and that's the figure. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, that's it.
That's it. And now you do what? You calculate what countries you have, you look at the LTV for each country, and accordingly you put a price tag on the purchase based on the LTV of that country.
That's
Right.
Yeah, because if you just put a low price all over the world, well, there might be traffic from rich countries, but very little. And that's kind
Okay.
of sad and bad.
I get it. So what's your next plan right now? I mean, what are the next steps? Are you going to further develop this game, or are you already further along in moving forward?
Actually, after the release of the game for about 2 months, probably until April, I was sitting there and I didn't imagine how it would be possible to jump this game. So I set a very high bar for myself when it came out, and I'm thinking about how I can do better. And we've released quite a few games since then that, well, they make literally pennies on the dollar. No matter how hard we try, they have an LTV game where the LTV is 3 pennies. So it's already there however you want, but it's impossible to pour on it, although it would seem that the game is interesting.
Although I know what LTV 3 pennies is, Pavel.
Here, and then I'm already frustrated thinking how to make it cooler, so I decided to take a course after all, game designer courses. I want to say that before that I was very skeptical about them, thinking, oh, they tell me something there, I know it all. But as it turns out, I don't. That is, they do tell interesting things. In fact, we learned about the Big Mac index there. And after that, I started to imagine how I could do better. Here. And we started, first of all, I redesigned a little bit the current game, which we released. And its LTV went up a little bit there, literally by some pennies. I mean, we made it more required donation, like, I don't know the right way to say it, to make you want to buy donations. Expanded the number of locations where individuals can view advertisements for rewards.
Because actually the amount showing ads doesn't really affect how long a person sits there. If he's watching ads, he can watch tons of them. Well, tons. I guess that's bad, of course. But let's just say that you can show a lot of advertising. The main thing is to do it competently.
And from this course, I realized where you can still insert advertising. And after the update, LTV grew, because more ads began to be shown. In fact, the income...
The course, if you don't mind me asking?
It's not, of course not. It's on dev to dev. There's a lot of cool courses there. By the way, which is sad, I felt like a bit of a sucker. I bought this course for about 150 euros. And after a week, all the courses were free, so it's a good time to go, yeah. And absolutely everything there is free.
It's not an advertisement, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yes.
But it's a really useful thing, because after that, as I say, I started to see mistakes of their own LTV.
And, you know, I have another question. We're talking right now. I'm going to put in at this point what it looks like. Yeah, the game. Tell me this. Did you intentionally do this fairly simple visual style on purpose, or was that based on your capabilities, was it?
Well, actually, I think a lot of people realize that there's an obvious Minecraft theme here. And really just we knew that kind of a visual style similar to Minecraft might appeal to the player. I mean, oh, Minecraft, cool. But we realized that it was really important to draw our own graphics. So we were getting a couple strikes from Mojang for even just having a sword that looked similar. I mean, not that we used graphics, but just had a game that looked like Minecraft. We got one game removed from the App Store for that reason. Here. And after that, we ordered separately already drawn graphics of the artist. And we just wanted to stick visually to Minecraft because it's more interesting for kids. You know, they see something familiar and they're like, wow, cool, we should like download it here. And so, yeah, they use these kind of spiky, simple graphics so that the kid already sees something familiar. Because kids are probably the easiest to capitalize on right now. But it is very, like, it is simple, but you will earn very little because advertising is cheap. Well, there's not going to be some big businessmen out there buying commercials advertising to kids.
Look, first question. You ended up spending a lot of money on advertising, but you started taking money out and spending it on yourself.
Yeah, you know, we can basically afford a lot of stuff now. I mean, I've both bought myself a computer, by the way. Closed the loan for the laptop. I bought both a computer and a MacBook. MacBook really just to do iOS builds because iOS is actually a very cool platform too. Yeah, and we've hired more people now. You know, like freelancing, we have 3 other guys working with us. We're helping them out like with orders and they're getting experience from us. And there's quite a lot of money for advertising now. I mean, after this release and this boom, especially with the top, we started to make a lot of money.
Can you listen? Grab a camera and snap a photo to display an old laptop and reveal your current work environment. This way, others will truly comprehend your ability to deliver tangible outcomes. Even in any conditions with a credit laptop, I mean, you have to worry, don't be afraid, take out the laptop loan and do the result.
Here, I'll tell you this. I bought a MacBook back in the days when we didn't get our first paycheck, and I mortgaged a credit laptop. Got it. 25,000. Yeah.
Double credit,
I
right?
pawned it, you know, turned it in, roughly speaking, and bought a used MacBook. Here. So, I'm not going to show you the old one. I've got a MacBook lying around somewhere, probably over there. It too, because it's secondhand, it has its own problems, but the main thing is that MacBook, I remember everyone has enough here. And my workplace, yeah, I'll show you. Well, actually, this is what my workspace looks like right now. I mean, a classic computer. It's right there. And I have all sorts of gadgets to keep me occupied, including my beloved Rubik's Cubes. I even designed a logo at one of my jobs. I also have a picture, metaphorically speaking, of the doubters and non-believers. An anti-stress bag, because sometimes it's very stressful, and the MacBook we use to build games. A test phone. To test how the games work on this one. And actually there's an iPad over there. That's also where we see how the games work. It's a mess of wires over here. Well, I think it's a familiar sight to everyone. Yes, and I want to say that this is probably my dream job right now. Because I've wanted a good computer for a long time. Yep. This is my favorite setup, or whatever it's called. And I started out with, again, I'm gonna say a laptop. A budget-friendly 14 laptop that would power up for only 15 minutes, limited in functionality, and sitting on a stool. So you can start with anything. You don't have to have a setup like this, here.
That's cool.
I wanted to say one more thing. We also have such an important thing in the game that since it was targeted at children, we wanted to make it as simple as possible. And if you play the game, you will realize that you can pass it just by pressing one button here. And it was very important to create some kind of interest when a person just presses a button and you watch something happen. So I always tried to do something like that. And that kind of advice. Something I realized is that you should always explain everything, especially if you have a target audience of children. So they come in and they're like, what's going on? And they delete the game, they'll go play another one. And so we've been adding tutorials. I mean, you literally have to lead the player by the hand there before learning the whole mid-core of the game. We have training on how to buy upgrades, on how to drive, on how to shoot. We even have training on donations, how to buy them with money. We literally teach everything to the player, and I've noticed that it works. The soft launches are especially helpful. When the player writes, I don't understand why it doesn't work, how to shoot. And I remembered an example like this before working with Arthur. The platformer you saw is apparently mine. I used to find this platformer under the yard and approach the kids and say, here, take it, play, I want to see how you play. And actually it played a big role too. That is, I could see that children are already live, something they don't do well. And when a lot of children don't understand how to do something, I realize that it's my mistake. I mean, I need to fix it. That's why feedback at the beginning is very important.
Listen, Maxim, did you look at the retention of the first day, the 7th day, some of those kind of metrics? Or do you have LTV and that's like the main metric?
Yes, we've been adding game analytics to understand how many players are reaching. Honestly, I don't remember the first literally period. We added chapters incrementally, the number of players who finished chapter 1 versus chapter 2.
It's like a funnel, right, basically? Yes.
A funnel. Yeah. That's the funnel we created. Something in the neighborhood of 10 to 9%. I mean, the whole game, it was this 9%.
Yeah. That's cool.
And the penalty kill numbers, honestly, I don't remember. Again, I haven't been swimming in that much.
So, just give me the last 3 tips.
Yeah, first of all, don't be afraid to try things, because when you initially start a game, you essentially have nothing to lose. I mean, you likely have a plethora of spare time. In my formative years, I wholeheartedly dedicated myself to the computer, simply attempting various things and experimenting. And you just let it out to gain experience, because the most valuable thing you have is experience. Each time you release it, you will make the game better and better. And so this game that I made in November, it's a concentration of all the knowledge I have of game design. And that's why the first advice is to try, the second advice is don't be afraid. Because I'm talking to a lot of my friends right now, they recognize me. Wow, Max, well done. And I tell them how you're worse than me, because I've always had this idea that I'm worse than everybody else. I used to look at all these companies like Supercell. As I observe their games, I often think I could also achieve something like that if I desired, so why can't I strive for greatness and also be seen as cool doing it? Here you go. Know that you're as good as anybody else. Those are the 2 most important things I've been following. So try and don't be afraid. And be optimistic, because if you don't love your game, it's highly likely that it will end up being negative. The games we created with the sole purpose of making money no longer provide any value. However, when you pour your passion and effort into a game, the outcome is vastly different. They're good games.
Thanks a lot, Max, for talking to me. That's it for the finals. I hope you'll come to the commentary and respond.
I will.
Comments to the questions, because folks are probably going to have some specific questions. I say thank you very much. I hope that I'll ask you some more questions and you'll answer me after the show. Yeah, okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye-bye.